Police officers have read it. What stupid law have you enforced just because someone was an a-hole? I've got a few. We have a small children's garden / park in our city. I was walking through one day and saw a guy picking cherry tomatoes off the plant and eating them. Therefore looks and not eating, and there's a sign at the entrance that says that. I politely told him to stop eating the tomatoes and pointed out the sign to him, explaining that the fruiting plants were there for the kids to see and that any food that comes from them will be picked and given to a homeless shelter. He didn't agree and picked another tomato and ate it right in front of me. I remembered that our city has an ordinance called intentional damage to city-owned shrubs and trees which carries around a $450 fine. He got a ticket for it that day. It's the only time anyone can ever remember that statute being used. Another time I pulled a car over because he had a cover over his license plate that used to be clear. Clear covers are legal, but had been damaged by the sun and weather to the point that you could barely read the plate under it. That's not legal. I stopped him with the intent of just letting him know of the problem and writing him a warning. When I told him why I stopped him, he picked up a book from his passenger seat with our state code of laws in it and asked me to show him where in the book it said he couldn't have a faded cover. He was a real ass about it too. I told him I wasn't going to go through his book looking for the statute, but that I would go back to my car and write down the statute number for him and that he could look it up for himself. Well, guess what? Our warning tickets don't have a space for the statute number, but our real tickets do. So he got a ticket with the statute number on it. He paid his $100 fine without coming to court. How about a cop getting a ticket for being an a-hole? We had one of our safety officers. They work for the province and enforce safety rules in the workplace. He was driving to a construction site about an hour out of town when a cop pulled him over for doing about 10 km/h over the limit. He tried to state he had only been going 10 over the limit, but the cop was being a dick and said something like rules are the rules. Cop goes back to the car, writes up his ticket, and comes back to give it to the guy. And the safety officer hands him back a ticket as well. Cop asks him what this is for, and he says rules are rules. When you are on the side of the highway you must be wearing your high visibility jacket. I always thought this was pretty funny. I usually don't add extra tickets when someone is an a-hole, but depending on how things start, will help me make my mind on real or warning tickets. Best case I can think of is how a guy turned a DUI into a $50,000 bond. He decided to tear my interior door handles off while sitting in my back seat and trying to reassemble the lock so it will work and open the door. Except I was staring at him, telling him to stop while he said he wasn't doing it. He tried it with both of them. So it's 2 felony counts of damaging government property. Then I couldn't find a spring from the door handle, so tampering with evidence, which is another felony. Then the car he drove there was a car he was supposed to be fixing at his job and he wasn't authorized to drive it, especially since it was taken to his shop for an oil change. He worked at a dealership and repaired cars, so he had a felony vehicle theft charge for trying to drive a customer's $100,000 car to his ex-girlfriend's house. My call was from his ex-girlfriend, and 2 neighbors called because he was screaming outside her door. He got public drunk and disorderly conduct for that. He was trying to hide when I got there, but he was on the 2nd floor of the apartment, so he got another charge of obstruction. He also got the DUI charge, so his license was pretty much gone because it was his 3rd or 4th DUI. Only charge that got dropped was tampering with evidence because it was too petty. I figured most of it would be dismissed, but his lawyer was horrible. He stayed in jail for like a month because his wealthy parents were tired of his shit, and he drove that $100,000 car through their closed garage before he drove it to his ex-girlfriend's house. Excessive noise from a vehicle. I never give that ticket because it's kind of a waste of time compared to what I could be doing, but also most people have the common sense not to be blasting their stuff at 150 decibels around the fuzz. I just finished a call at Walmart. It's Walmart, so the parking lot is packed. People, kids, families everywhere. This truck starts rolling through super slow. Dude had the power stone hooked up to his sound system. Pure dick move. Pulled him over just to have the conversation about respecting others. Guy was a dick. Like a huge, floppy angry green dick. He got $1,100 worth of tickets where he could have gotten a warning. if not for the attitude. For those curious about where the fine comes from, it's like $80 for the noise ticket. It's $1,000 for not having car insurance. Like, he didn't have any at all. First-hand patrol story here. It was a busy night a few years back, and some idiot was running around lighting anything flammable on fire. Dumpsters, couches, mattresses, you name it. We ended up with guys escorting fire trucks through the neighborhood just soaking down anything that could conceivably be ignited because nobody could find this guy. I was part of the group searching for him. I passed by an apartment complex and heard a solid thud against the side of my patrol car. I looked over and saw a shirtless, curly-haired drunk guy standing in his doorway laughing. I stopped the car to inspect for damage and planned to have a little chat with the guy if there wasn't any damage, mostly to advise him that he should 1. Probably stay inside because he is drunk, and 2. Not throw footballs at police vehicles. He was an absolute jerk from start to finish. Long story short, we have a city ordinance entitled throwing missiles into a street, which is usually used to get people to stop blocking a street if they are playing ball in it. He is the only person I know of to actually be charged under that ordinance. Former police officer here. There was a law where I worked that banned spitting in public. I only wrote 2 or 3 people up for it, and it was because the people were huge a-holes. Even the prosecutors were like, really? Expect a rating in public? How petty are you? I work in a town of 4,000 roughly. We have 2 main streets that run the entire length of town. One is in the middle of town and is small businesses and residential. The other is main traffic and the road you take if you need to pass through fairly quickly. Well, in 10 years I have only written 1 jaywalking ticket. Just strutted out into traffic without even looking. Car 4 up from me locked them up to avoid hitting her. Chick that jaywalked flipped her the bird. She got the ticket. Plus we have a disorderly conduct ticket that loosely applies to flipping the bird. She got that one too. No traffic control either BTW. Lights or stop signs. Cop here. Was at the end of my night shift, about to head home, when I heard a crash near the detachment. Went to investigate and saw a couple of guys walking away from a local homeless feeding shelter and a shopping cart that was thrown at the building, nearly breaking the window. Went to go have what was supposed to be a 5-minute chat about not breaking stuff on your way home from the bar, but one of the guys kept walking away from me. Just said nope, and I don't have to stop for you, after I formally detained him. Wouldn't give a name or anything. Eventually told him it's an obstruction charge, which I rarely do, because people are kinda jerks a lot of the time, but he kept not saying. Ended up being arrested for mischief, held overnight in the drunk tank, and a $250 ticket for obstructing a peace officer, because he didn't want to have a 5-minute talk about not being a jerk when drunk. I was driving on the interstate at speed limit, 70 miles per hour, when a vehicle overtook me at about 75 miles per hour. This is no big deal, except the driver smiled arrogantly and waved as he did it. I had nothing better to do, so I pulled him over with the intention of warning him for going 5 miles per hour over. The driver then proceeds to tell me that it is illegal for me to issue a ticket for 5 miles per hour over the limit due to blah blah blah. I tried to explain that I could, in fact, write the ticket, and he remained adamant that I couldn't. Needless to say, that was the first and only time I wrote a ticket for 5 miles per hour over. Cop here. I call it the a-hole test. I treat everyone the way I would like to be treated, with respect and courtesy. There was one time I stopped someone for completely disregarding a stop sign in a high pedestrian area. When I walked up to the person's car, he was immediately angry and frustrated with me. Called me a few choice words, and his conduct was overall negative. I tend to give people warnings, unless the offense was very reckless. This guy definitely got a ticket. State law requires a reconstruction permit for extremely minor modifications done to a vehicle, like raised or lowered suspension, but nobody ever obtained these permits. Nobody. Hell, most people didn't even know they existed. But if you were a big enough dick, it was a really handy ticket to stick someone with. The other, possibly lamest and yet most satisfying, was to write someone up for a burned out license plate light. Canadian cop here. I currently police a very rural, Very poor First Nation reserve. A lot of the frequent flyers in my community are regularly placed on conditions to not drink alcohol. Problem is, alcoholism goes hand in hand with poverty, so it's pretty rare to find any of those people sober. Technically I can arrest/charge any of these people anytime I encounter them, and they've been drinking, so basically whenever I want. If I encounter one of these people and they're being even a little bit friendly/cooperative, they get a pass/ride home. If they cross my path and decide to be an asshole, they get to spend a night in cells. If they've done it a few times recently, they'll also pick up a criminal charge. It's not that I enjoy lodging or charging people, but them acting like an a-hole with me is a pretty good indicator that they're going to go beat up people, break some stuff, steal some stuff, etc. later that day. I prefer to nip that kind of stuff in the bud when I can. Cop here. I've given a-holes tickets for no tag lights and not having the proper decal sticker on the license plate. Now here's something you may not know about cops. It turns out we're people. Some of us are jerks and some of us are super nice people. I'm the cop you wanna get pulled over by or called on, because I can promise you, if you have a good attitude, you're not getting a ticket. I don't wanna go to court, and I don't wanna add any financial burdens to your life. I police in poverty-stricken areas, so I'm extra nice. In fact, I only pull people over if they do something really dumb in traffic, like cutting someone off, pulling in front of someone, or running a red light. And no, they don't get tickets. A good verbal warning usually works. Besides, seeing flashing lights in the rearview mirror usually scares them enough. No need to be a prick and give someone a ticket for an honest mistake. That being said, you run your mouth when I'm being nice will definitely get you a ticket. We had an influx of people being total pricks to loss prevention people after they had been detained. Instead of just ticketing people for minor theft, we started taking them all to jail. Word got around, and loss prevention is getting hassled less. It's illegal to give false identification info to us. Had a guy we deal with all the time and knew his first name but couldn't remember his last name. I'll say his name is John. John was being a jackass and yelling at someone in the street, so I roll up to talk with him. "John, what's going on tonight?" "Suck my dick." "Well John, you done for the night?" "F you, I'm going home." "John, what's your last name? Need it for my call." "My name is James Smith." "Dude, I arrested you last week, that's not your name." "James Smith." "Okay, jail it is." That's it for today. Sort of crazy how much of a judgment call it is for cops to ticket people. Take care of each other in the comments. Thanks.